Hi, how are you?
So we are doing a interesting episode this time. It's a little bit more serious and in depth. I may cry, full disclosure. Or warning, trigger warning. Maybe?
Trigger warning. Yeah, that seems appropriate.
And we're gonna talk about grief. The reason being is, well, actually, do you want to say why we've been absent for about a month?
Yeah, we just had a lot of shit going on. Like, we did record episodes at the beginning of the month, but then we both got slammed with work stuff, and then a bunch of life shit happened back to back. So, kind of in anticipating this, we wanted to do a series called Learning to Cope, and the grief just seemed like the perfect first episode because Khairah's got some shit that happened or like is compounded all within this next month or so. And then unfortunately my mom got some rather stressful news. I'll say it like that.
Yeah.
Yep. So
we needed a break.
We needed to take some time just to do life stuff. But thankfully, the reception for just the fact that we're making a podcast in general has been very positive, and we've gotten a lot more like traction. Because I bullied Khairah into getting Twitter, but that's just been so fun because now I can tweet from our business account to her to make her be more active.
She has done that because I wasn't doing anything before, and she was like, "Oh, we're gonna get you started." And so that's been interesting. But we'll see how far that goes.
Yep, and we also finished finally redoing our profile picture thanks to Khairah.
And Kaylyn.
No, listen, she unintentionally did the background, and I just had the idea to combine those pieces.
It was fun, though. I was very shocked when I saw it, because at first I didn't recognize it. But with going back to that, we needed a break. There was a lot of just stuff going on, and just part of grief and what we'll get into a little bit is taking time to self-care, and that was one of the things that we had to do. And so we took a break, and we didn't want to have to force anything and make it seem unauthentic. And just for the sake of saying that we posted something, we'd rather get out good stuff and at a later time than get stuff out, just bullshit out, just
rushed,
just for fuck's sake.
Like the episode that's gonna air today. That one's a little bit rushed because this Celestine prophecy, because I was supposed to do it like an entire month ago.
I don't think that it was rushed. It's just that we didn't post it.
No. It's gonna air. I haven't finished editing.
Oh, you're talking about the editing. Oh.
Yeah, it's gonna air without edits, and then because I can update it after the fact, it'll be fixed at some point.
Well, I mean, there's supposed to be imperfections in the beginning.
I was gonna say we're still new to podcasting. I think we've only got this is gonna be our 13th episode.
Interesting. Interesting. Okay. Well, I guess we've done enough stalling.
Yes.
So we're talking about grief.
Do you want me to go first because mine are kind of tame, or do you want to just dive right into it?
Don't say it like
they
that.
They are comparatively.
You can go ahead, go first, but don't say it like that.
They are, though. I have to be honest. The only experiences that I have with dealing with like deep grief have been within the last. Not really within the last 2 or 3 years, because 2020 was kind of uneventful as far as that goes personally, which is, I have to be grateful for that. Nobody in my immediate family was lost to COVID or anything like that. But the year before that, my dog had passed away, and then my freshman year of high school, my mom's mom passed away. Or not high school, college. And actually, I think it was either 6th grade or 7th grade, her dad passed away, but I was so young that I'd never gotten to actually establish a connection with him the way that I probably would have needed to really feel that loss. So that was like, damn, my grandfather died, but he had cancer, so that was just a really long process. So it was like we knew it was coming the whole time. Same thing kind of with her mom, but hers came out of nowhere. So like her dad, my mom's dad, he went through it for like 2 or 3 years. And then it started gradually getting worse. And then we weren't actually allowed to see him when he was in the hospital because my mom was like, we don't want that to be like the image of him that you have in your head or whatever. And I kind of, on one hand, respect her for that. But on the other hand, I never got to say goodbye. So
Okay, this is what I'll interject real quick and say, based on experiences and stuff like that, I have immense respect for your mom doing that, because that's one of the toughest things to do in having to create that separation. And I can tell you right now, because you didn't have to deal with that, you at some point you will. I mean, not in that aspect, but seeing someone, an image that you don't want to be lasting.
Oh no, I definitely immediately got that with her mom my freshman year.
Okay, you end up ultimately being grateful for that.
Well, yeah, like I said, I'm grateful that she did that, because I was, like I said, I was really young. I was like 11 or 12, and I don't even think I fully understood mortality at that point, which is kind of funny to say. But because of that, I didn't really remember him at all, because I was so disengaged from him in the last few months of his life. So my mom's nephew, my cousin Kix, actually ended up showing me some videos of him when he was like in the first few stages of going to the hospital, and he was singing and he was just up talking, and I was like, that's what he sounds like. I've been hearing that voice like either in the back of my head or like in my dreams for years, and just couldn't place it anymore, because I really don't remember him like that, you know what I mean? And that sounds sad to people. Like I know Khairah, because she was so close to her grandfather, that's a little sad for her to hear. But for me, that's just kind of how it is. I don't remember him, and I don't feel bad about that, because it's not like I tried to forget him. Yep. Okay. And then for my granny, that one was a lot sadder, because I'd gotten a car that like the year or two before she started getting sick. And then out of nowhere, she just was in and out the hospital. Then she was in there for like 4 months in a row. And then she couldn't go back home after that. She used to live in River Towers Apartments, for anybody that's familiar with Jefferson, like downtown Jefferson. Yeah. But then she was in the hospital for 4 months straight. Then she had to go to assisted living. But then right when we were moving her to an assisted living apartment instead of like I think it was Botsford, she got like really, really bad, and I had to go to college at that point. So we've spent like the entire month of August trying to fix shit for her and like move her around and blah blah blah. And then I just had to leave for school. And then I had been there, I think, for a month. And then they came up to, they tried to play it smooth, you know what I'm saying? Like, oh, let's just all go out to eat. You know, we haven't seen you in a month, blah, 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 blah. And then we get to, like, I think it was like fucking Red Lobster. And then my mom gets a call. And then they knew her condition was bad. But then at that point, they're like, yeah, she's got 3 to 7 days left to live. And they told her that right when we got there. And it was funny because my mom just didn't come to the table, and nobody else kind of noticed, or either that or they were trying to act like they didn't so that I wouldn't go figure it out. But I'm paying attention. I haven't seen you guys in a month either. I'm wondering why she's not here. I went out and found her, and she's crying. And she told me what happened. And that's when I started to realize how I cope with grief. I kind of was like, well, if she's crying, then I can't cry, because then neither of us will have our shit together. So I waited until she got hers together, went in, and then I called it wasn't my boyfriend, but he basically filled that role for me. I called him and told him what was going on, because my granny had actually allowed us to spend time together, because we were like, I was quote unquote fast. So I lost my virginity when I was 16 to him, and we were just dealing with each other that whole time. And my mom was like upset, and she was like, I don't want you to see this boy anymore, blah, 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 blah. So I would go bring him over to my granny's house, you know, and we'd just hang out there. Anyway, long story short, that was the first time someone I'd actually gotten to know on a deep level had passed away. And I had just gotten to start spending time with her. I had just got my car. I would go over there. I helped her wrap gifts. I would just spend time with her and watch TV, because like Khairah knows by this point, sometimes I just don't feel like talking. She'll talk and I'll listen, but I don't necessarily feel like having a conversation. My grandma was the same way. If I needed to talk, we could talk. If I didn't need to talk, we would just sit there and watch TV. That was perfect. And I wish I'd gotten to do more of that with her as an adult. Anyway, then 2019.
Wait, before you finish,
I'm hopping
I want to say,
yeah.
no, not the hopping around. Stop dismissing yourself, because, and this is going to be lesson on coping. You talking about it and reliving like the happy moments help you with dealing with it. So don't dismiss yourself and be like, oh yeah, anyway. No, that, I mean, it's heartwarming to hear it, but it also makes you feel good. Like I can see you. I wish we were video recording, but you can see like she actually gets brighter when she's talking about it, and that's, you want to get to that point where you're able to talk about it in that way, because at first it's going to be really hard.
I gotta see, and that's the thing though. It wasn't really like. I feel this is where I wanted to go first, because Khairah's got a lot deeper wounds. No, yeah, I have to be honest. You have deeper wounds from your losing your loved ones than I do, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And it's only because we've talked, like compared our experiences in, not even intentionally, maybe like she might tell me something and then I'll compare it, but I just had to realize we're on different, not wavelengths, but like we're just different the way we handle that, and I think that's fine. It's what makes it interesting. And then the part of the reason that I wanted to talk about this, I'm gonna just sidetrack it briefly, is because one day Khairah and I were sitting there having a talk, and I think this was one of like the top 3 most uncomfortable conversations we'd ever had, but it was so necessary. She was talking to me about her grandfather, and she like she said, she was going through the good moments, and it was fun watching her do that. But then she started explaining, because I think she articulated as, if someone asked me how would I deal with grief, this is what I would say. But she just completely said it unprompted. So I'm like, what made you say that today? And we got into some other
stuff.
Yeah, we got into some other stuff, because I like asking invasive questions. But she respects that about me at this point, because she knows I'm not doing it to attack her or anything. I really am just curious. Yeah, anyway, point was, she had something very poignant to say, and I hope it comes up today. I'm not going to force it, and I don't even know if she remembers saying it at this point. Okay, good. But yeah, so that's part of the reason why I at least wanted to have this conversation, because I think her having such deep wounds made it easier for her to understand the depth of healing that was necessary. Anyway, back on track. When my dog passed away in 2019, that was one of the most heartbreaking experiences ever, because you can't even really say goodbye like you would to a human. So with my grandma, I was able to talk to her on the phone, or like I actually got to go see her, because luckily enough, they had come up on a weekend, so I could go home with them immediately after that. I got to see her, got back to campus, not even 6 hours later, my cousin that lived in Ann Arbor had to come pick me up and take me down because she had passed away. And I remember that whole trip, I was just more focused on whether or not he was really actually smoking weed in front of me, because my family does not do that. So he's like really just in the car blowing a whole fat ass blunt, and that's all I could think about, because like, you know, I knew she was dying, so like it wasn't like a damn, I can't believe she's gone type of thing. Oh my gosh, that just reminded me, I have something else to talk about. But anyway, so my dog, I had wanted a dog when I was younger for years. I told all my teachers that. I was drawing pictures of it. I kept asking for dog books, and like I knew everything about every type of dog. And then they caved in like a few weeks before my 10th birthday, and we went to the Humane Society, and we went to the one in Detroit. And they're just, my mom likes these cutesy little tiny dogs, but I hate the noise. They just too fucking much. So we all disagreed on that one. Then we went to the Westland Humane Society, and we found this cute little dog with these adorable ears. He just looks so fucking friendly. And then we're like, okay, we'll think about it. I don't know. We leave the room, because, you know, they let you go in there and play with them or whatever. And then we leave the room, and we're like, okay, we'll just give it one last shot. We'll see if we really get along with him. We turn the corner, and he's not in the room. He's in the fucking hallway walking up towards us. We're like, oh, it's him. You know? So that was when I was 9, literally about a week and a half before I turned 10. I'm 23 now for context. But I would think I was 21. Yeah, I was 21. Oh, I was turning 21 that year that he passed away. And that was really, we got to have him for a really, really long time. I think they said he was 13 years old or something like that. Because, again, we didn't really know how old he was when we got him. But he lived a really long life. But unfortunately, he developed cancer, and none of us could tell because he had so much fur. So we take him to get groomed, and he's got they're like, oh, he's got like a lump on it, and it looks like he's been scratching it. So it's like bleeding or whatever. And my mom's like, oh, that's not good. Let's just take him in and see what this is. They do surgery to remove it. And I'm saying all this with full confidence after the fact. I didn't know any of this until I come home one day and I can see the skin on his stomach and a bunch of stitches. And he's got on a cone. I go to pet him and I just feel the deepest sadness I've ever felt in my life. And it wasn't coming from me. And I burst out in tears immediately. I didn't even make full contact with him. I just got close. And this is after I've been doing Reiki. I think I was in massage school still. So, like, as far as being energetically balanced, that was the most open I've ever been in my life. And that was the deepest sadness, still to this day, that I've ever felt. And then that was maybe like a Thursday. Then they're like, oh, we got to put t-shirts on him so he doesn't scratch at himself. But he's like not moving. He's not eating. He just looks so sad. He's like, you know, when he does make noise, it's like a grunt or a low moan. I know.
That's Missy.
That's, yeah, my cat. She helped me out, man. I think I would have been way more lost if I didn't have something depending on me. Anyway, so then my parents, that was on Thursday. Then Sunday, my parents leave to go on fucking vacation. Tom, I don't know what he ended up doing. I think he went to Chicago. So he left for Chicago. And then my adult cousin Bear, who was living with us, I think he either went to work at the factory, like he worked the night shift or something like that. So I'm home alone with this dog, trying to give him medicine, trying to feed him, trying to do anything by myself. Now, luckily, I have the greatest friends in the world. And a friend that I share my name with, her name's Kaylyn also. She just out of the blue. This is how I know, like, I don't believe in God per se, but I know God is real because she just said, something told me to call you. And she just sat on FaceTime with me for like 2 or 3 hours, watching me like try and give him the medicine, help him pick up my mood or whatever. Then Monday rolls around and they're like, yeah, we gotta start taking off the fentanyl patch. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. He's still not eating. I called my parents because I'm like, I don't know what to do. And I'm still alone. So then my grandma and my aunt pulled up at like 3 a.m, bless them, and helped me take him to the animal hospital. And then these dumbass bitches are like, oh, there's nothing wrong. Obviously, there's something wrong. Can you give him some pain medication? They're like, oh, he should be taking the pills. I even bought like a little pill popper gun for those of you who have animals that won't take, shush, man. For animals that won't take medication, there's like a pill popper gun. So I even bought that, and I'm trying. He's like chewing the end of it off because he really does not want to take the medicine. Like, that was kind of funny. It was getting annoying. But then Monday night into Tuesday, Tom comes back. So it's me and my young brother in the house now. I was 21, so he had to have just been 19. And we have to take the fentanyl patch off. And that's the only pain medication he's currently on because he won't take the pills. He starts wailing. I've never heard an animal make that noise, and I never want to hear it again in my life. And we're sitting here, it's like maybe it's probably 11, almost midnight. And then we're just sitting there. Neither of us know what to fucking do. I don't want to take him back to the vet because it costs $600 for them to say, oh, there's nothing wrong, on top of the $4,000 for the surgery in the first place. So then we're sitting there. I'm like, Tom, I'm sorry. I have to go to class tomorrow. I have to go to sleep. I'm sorry. I go upstairs and I have to force myself to go to sleep and block out the noise of my dog wailing. I come out, I get dressed in the morning. I do what I have to do. I rush out the door, but then something felt weird, I glanced at DJ, but I didn't have time to do anything about that. So I text Tom. I'm like, can you try to get him to take his pills, blah, 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 blah. You only have to do it at like 8:30, I think. And it was really early. I left it maybe like 7, which is early for me. I'll say that. I don't like waking up early. I get there. I get in the building. I'm setting up the table so I can do my first massage because I'm technically working on clients. And then Tom calls me. He's like, Kaylyn, he's not breathing. I'm like, what? Are you serious? And I blacked out. You know what I mean? I'm in the middle. I'm in public. I just ran. I could not handle that. You know what I'm saying? And it feels so, not to invalidate my experience, but I have to be aware enough to acknowledge that it feels ridiculous to be that emotional about a dog more than I was about the humans in my life. But it's he lived with me. You know what I'm saying? Like Khairah, I feel like has a unique experience because she got to live with her grandparents or grandparent. I never got to have that, so those people were not someone I saw on a consistent daily basis that actually influenced my decisions.
And here's what I'll say. I'm sorry, I have to interject
Yeah, no, go for
because
it.
the difference between you being able to cope with your grandmother easily and with DJ differently is, you specifically said it, saying goodbye is different. When you get a chance to say goodbye, that makes it makes all the difference.
Yeah.
Even if it's still gonna hurt, but it makes all the difference. So you were able to cope with your grandmother a little bit different than you were. I feel like if you hadn't had the chance to cope with her, with saying goodbye, then you would have taken it a lot harder than you did.
And I definitely would have taken it. I know exactly how I would have absorbed it. It would have been like a more of a regret than an actual sadness and type of grief.
You wouldn't have been able to like focus on your cousin smoking in the car and stuff like that because you were able to start working on your grief prematurely.
Yeah, because it was inevitable. The entire year.
It was inevitable.
Yeah,
so and the fact that you were told, okay, 3 to 6 days, it was inevitable. So you were like, I know this is gonna happen. So that makes all the difference. With DJ, it's different. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I got to meet him. He was sweet,
beautiful boy.
He was so sweet. And interesting thing is, I'm afraid of dogs, but I was never afraid of him. I mean, a little bit, but I knew that he was hurt me.
His size, yeah.
But he was so sweet. And interesting thing is, when he passed, that's when me and Kaylyn actually, I guess, got back to being friends. Because I reached out to you when he passed.
Yeah, because I was posting a lot of sad boy shit on the internet. Unfortunately, my feelings were everywhere.
We just checked in, but go ahead. Finish.
No, I do also. I want to end because I like having a series of things going on. So I do want to interject that a few of the people that reached out to me at the time, unfortunately, did not have positive intentions for me, and that led into another one of our relationship segments. But Khairah thankfully always has my back, so I knew at least 2 people that day, including 2 people plus my brother, had my best interest at heart. But yeah, so my dog fucking died in the middle of the week. My parents were gone. There were no actual adults in the house. It was just me and my younger brother. And we had to call my mom's cousin to help us pick up his body, put him in the car so we could take him to PetSmart. And I had to drive. And top 3 worst experiences. I'm gonna read some of it. This is the first time I'm ever gonna this is the first and only time you're gonna hear this much of my full thoughts online, but I was taking a lot of that very personally. I was like, was there something that I should have done about this? How is this not my fault? If I had done this differently, maybe this wouldn't have happened. So I wrote out a whole note because I couldn't trust my current boyfriend at the time, who is my ex that I always talk about, because we were actually in the process of breaking up. This was July 2019. I tried to break up with him in May of that year, and then he was supposed to leave for California at the end of June. He put it off, so he was leaving 10 days after all of this happened. I just remembered. But yeah, anyway, so I'm writing, I regret not staying downstairs and drowning out his crying to go to sleep, but at the same time I thought I had to go to my shift and I made it on time. I was responsible with myself. Or there was a point at 1:30 a.m. when Tom and I just recognized there was nothing we could do. I'm not responsible for his passing. It was inevitable. He clearly had cancer for a while, even if we didn't know that. DJ, this one I can't even comfortably tell my family, but DJ being here was kind of a burden on me, and I couldn't tell you why to this day. And this is one of my unhealthy coping mechanisms. I deal with things with denial, and that was one of the sharpest experiences of that for me. I got rid of all of his stuff. I went around the house the day he died, grabbed all the dog stuff, put it in the bag, and then set it to the side. And it's easier for me to, I don't know, it's kind of hard to remember at this point that we ever had a dog, and we had him for 10 years, I think it was 11 years or something like that. And it's still hard for me to acknowledge we had a dog. And my mom is trying to get a new one, and I kept telling her I'm not ready for that. I'm like mentally still not dealing with whatever it was that I shoved aside at the time. Because that was, again, it was deep. Like, I've never had any emotional experience so, like, visceral that I couldn't see anymore. You know what I mean?
Do you think that the emotion was what was the burden for you, or just him being here for the 11 years was?
I couldn't tell you. Like, it just, the house, and I hate to say it, it just feels more familiar with him not being here, which is weird. And like, I left for college, so I wasn't really hanging out with him that often. I had moved out also, so there's just a good 2-3 years in a row where I wasn't in the house with him all the time. So when I did, like, if my parents went out of town, they're like, "Oh, can you watch the house?" I'd be like, "Oh, now I can't. I can't spend the night at the place where I can smoke because I have to go feed the dog or something like that," which is so stupid and so petty in hindsight. But that's where my head was at. So just various things like that. I probably got more written here that I don't want to acknowledge. But one thing I do want to say, I, how do I say this? I don't know how to this that was something that verified spiritual experiences for me in more ways than one. So like I said, for my friend, she believes in God so deeply that she had a godlike experience that brought her to me when I needed her. But then for me, I every time I was on like psychedelics or whatever, and I'll redact it maybe, but every time I was on psychedelics, I just felt like something was coming, something that I was afraid of. And I could not tell why. And this was years, you know what I'm saying? Years. Every time I would get high, I would just be very anxious. And then I would be like, okay, I'll just send myself love, support, whatever in the future and like let it go. And I thought that was just some bullshit. But then I feel like that's what saved me from spiraling when I blacked out, because I feel like I would have gotten lost like in my own head, you know what I mean? I don't know, it just feels like hearing people describe this in media or like TV and stuff like that, or books, it's always like I can't relate to that, you know what I mean? Or like it just seems so far-fetched that people would genuinely spiral like that. Like losing your mind, does it feels so much further away than it actually is. Yeah, wild to say that. Anyway, that was a lot of talking.
I mean, but it was warranted.
Necessary.
27.
Hey, that's one of Khairah's
my numbers.
Yeah, I was gonna say not lucky numbers, but spiritual numbers.
Yeah.
Angel numbers. There we go. I was looking for the word.
It's that and 19. So, no, you gotta finish.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't have any. So I have to disclaimer this. I guess we're not trying to teach you guys how to cope with grief. We're just sharing how we've done it. Mm-hmm. And for me, unfortunately, that usually is like a huge amount of denial involved. So like, not denying reality, but denying what caused the reality, if that makes sense. So like, yes, I currently live in a house where there's no dog. I'm fine with acknowledging that, but not acknowledging that there's no dog because he died. You know what I'm saying? Shit like that.
I think even, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. That's just such a weird thing, because I know hearing this about other people, I can just hear how that sounds, and I know this is not going to carry well, especially because people can't see us talking, which we should be working on. So slap on the wrist for that. But yeah, no, just I can see how that sounds when you're detached from it. We're like,
no, but detachment is a coping mechanism to sometimes just to keep you sane, because like with some people, and I know that you do it sometimes too, you may overthink on the situation. Like you said, what could I have done different? So with that, your way of not going into that mindset so you don't spiral is to say, I can't deal with it, distance myself.
That's not what I meant, but that is a good point. I meant detachment as far as like people listening who are not literally attached to the story. But no, you still had a good point. Because yeah, no, it's that also. I tend to, Khairah can even say this, I detach from her pretty regularly, and I don't do it on purpose, but that's something that I've unfortunately developed. Not even, I wouldn't describe it as to keep myself safe because I understand the connotations behind saying that because I don't feel safer doing it. But yeah. Detachment. Okay, hold on. We have to pause it because we're recording on my laptop this time instead of the phone, and it's got 15 minutes less recording time.
A few minutes later.
All right, so we just recorded about 6, 9, somewhere below 10 minutes of audio, and then my browser just collapsed.
So it's lost. But I do remember where we left off, and I was asking her if she actually closed off on me because I don't notice that.
Yeah, and it's not as blatant as I feel like it could be because I'm not out here wearing my damage like with pride, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not gonna be like, oh, this person, and I still do that, and I have to acknowledge it more lately, like, oh, this person hurt me, so I'm not gonna do X with you. Like, real life, I can't call Khairah my best friend, even though that's what she is on paper and in reality, just because other people that I've associated those expectations with, I've been not necessarily let down or betrayed, because in reality I was overextending my expectations without ever talking to them about what I expected from that, blah blah blah. I know Khairah is not gonna be like that because she's a whole ass adult, number one. Number two, she's a more reasonable person, but I still within myself have issues acknowledging her role in my life, you know what I mean? And because I'm not a dog shit human being, she's never gonna be like, because she still thinks I'm a good friend, you know what I'm saying?
Still thinks you are a good friend.
Yeah, no, because you're not. I feel like because and this is a personal thing, because I've never showed you the type of friend that I want to be, then I'm the only one comparing like
the level.
Yeah.
Okay, here's what I'll say. Or what I feel I need to say is, I feel that if you were more of what you feel that you should be, which may not be authentic to you, possibly, you may be more overbearing and not what I need in a friend. But right now, you are what I need. Like,
that's fair.
When I need the emotional support, you're there. Like, we're gonna get into like why I wanted to talk about this,
mm-hmm.
but she just texted me yesterday and was like, hey, you good? That's literally all. And she told me, she was like, I kind of wanted to say something before, but I didn't want to be overbearing. I made it clear.
What I specifically said is I didn't want to be on her dick all day.
Okay, but that's still overbearing.
Yeah.
But she genuinely cares and worries about me. And I was just like, actually, I'm good. And I think what helped with that was we talked about it a few days before, where I was like, look, I'm in a bad mood today. I just want to cry. I don't know why I want to cry. I just want to, but I know Saturday is going to be terrible. She remembered that and was like, how are you feeling today? And so for me, that's being what I need in a friend. So that makes you a good friend to me. Mm-hmm. And you can't convince me otherwise.
And that's fair. I can't argue with that, obviously. You know, everybody's got their different perceptions and shit. But yeah, what did I want to say?
We also wanted to make a note about grief in itself, because we also wanted to make sure, because she did start talking about her experience with her boyfriend or ex-boyfriend.
Man.
Ex.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I didn't even want to call him my ex for so long because I was still grieving that situation. But
and
yeah,
that's what we're gonna say, is that grief is not only in the aspect of loss. There's other ways to experience grief. Right now, we're just for the most part focusing on loss.
Yeah, because those are heavy. Yeah,
we will revisit, and talk about other things, especially since we plan on talking about coping or our ways of the way that we cope with stuff.
We're gonna have a whole series on it.
Right?
Yay!
No.
Yeah.
No. But yeah, we're going to talk about that. But grief is not just centered on loss, and don't think that you haven't experienced grief because you haven't lost or felt pain in losing someone or someone or some being, because even losing her pet, that he was part of the family, he was a family member, so that you lost someone.
I was gonna say, I have to slightly disagree because listen, I think all grief in some ways deals with some form of loss, but it's not always a permanent loss, at least because I don't have this thorough loss. I was gonna say, I don't have as thorough of an understanding of grief per se, because I just don't look into that kind of stuff, but like there's death of a loved one, there's just people leaving your life, there's people like losing friendships and shit like that, you know what I'm saying? That kind of thing.
And I can actually attest to that because for a long time I was in denial about losing a quote-unquote best friend that I considered, or that I called my sister, and actually I wasn't the one who even initiated that. So, and I was just like, no, this person is still my friend, and it hurt me to have to recognize, and although I kept getting signs from everything, recognize that that this person is a best friend, but I had to be like, okay, but what made it easier is having genuine best friends, and I have 3 of those right now, and that sounds so bad.
Right. No, like when all of the people around you are genuine friends, I think you're better off than people who just have a fuck ton of friends.
Yeah, and that doesn't have genuine interest in like your best interest at heart, because I can honestly say when I went through the situation I'm going to talk about, the person that called me her sister and was like, yeah, this is my best friend, wasn't the person that was there for me. So
yeah, man, you can't. That's a whole different path. I did want to briefly acknowledge, though, I'm noticing the more and more we have these kind of conversations that I deal with grief by detaching, denying, and getting angry. I don't really like being sad because I associate that with depressive symptoms, and I don't like the way most of the people around me discuss depression. So, like, we're also going to make a Learning to Cope episode about this, but I forgot to talk about the news. So, my mom and I had to go in for testing on the same day at the beginning of this month. Hers was a colonoscopy, and mine was ADHD testing.
She's not stupid.
No, I'm not stupid. I actually have a high average IQ, but I 100% have ADHD. And unfortunately, my mom has stomach lymphoma. So both of our tests came back with results. So in a more recent way of grieving, I felt really, really bad because last year, or maybe late 2019, my mom and I had a conversation because she's had Crohn's for the last 10 or so years. I said, I feel like you're not taking care of yourself enough. I feel like if you don't get your shit together, you'll never be able to meet my kids. And she laughed it off. She's like, oh, you're being dramatic. But then, this year, no, you went from having Crohn's to having cancer. Ma'am, on one hand, this is exactly what I was worried about. And that's exactly why I said something. To the point where I fucking hate doing physical labor. And I am voluntarily cooking once a week. And, like, we were doing real complicated recipes at first. But, like, now we're just making sure there's shit that she likes that she can actually eat.
I mean, not to say she didn't like what we made.
No, yeah. To the point where one of them upset her stomach because it was just too heavy. And she didn't say anything because she liked it so much. Like, that's not productive. The point is to help you feel better. Anyway, so yeah, that's part of why we had to take a break. My mom has freaking cancer now, and this is the first time we're going to be saying it publicly because nobody's going to watch this far into the episode anyway. It is what it is. And shout out to those of you who do. If you drop an F in the chat or in the comments, yeah, man. Yeah, no, like, that's a video game reference. See, Khairah's not hip to the internet. We'll get there. But F's in the chat. But yeah, that was part of the news that I got. So one of my episodes is going to be learning to cope with ADHD because I've apparently been doing that for the better part of 23 years. And now we're also all in the family learning how to cope with my mom's diagnosis.
Yeah, I've been adopted.
Yes. Because honestly, initial reaction, Khairah was way more upset than I was. Like, for me, I can't really be surprised because her symptoms just all of a sudden started getting worse at the end of last year. And 2020 was already kind of bad, so that was just the cherry on top. But again, like I said, the other hand of why I needed to talk about this is because part of me feels like, did I accidentally speak that into existence? And of course, that's not how things work. I was just noticing a negative pattern of behavior and I called attention to it. That doesn't mean that I had any role in that, but I still have to take an actual second and sit back and think about it. And
because we're human.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I like, as superhuman as I wish I was, I still have to, like, I feel like you become superhuman by acknowledging just how human you are.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. I talked for 35 minutes, technically twice. I think it's Khairah's turn.
Well, I was trying to avoid it. No. So we'll say the thing that Kaylyn wanted me to bring up is we were talking about my grandfather who passed, and I definitely will cry because I almost cried when she was talking about her dog.
My situation,
I am an emotional person.
Mm-hmm.
But I was talking about my grandfather, and there was one thing I like to think. I am a thinker, and one of the ways that I was coping with my grandfather who had passed was thinking about how grief is, because you always have these people that come up to you and say, are you over it yet? Well, it's been this long, you should be over it by now. You don't get over it. That if you expect and sit around and wait to get over it, you'll never get better. Mm-hmm. You have to learn to live with it. And a way to put it in my mind, or to I guess make it clearer in my mind, was to make an example, and I work better with examples. So to me, grief is like, or losing someone is like getting a wound, and if it's important, it will leave scars behind. And then eventually, when you look at those scars, you can laugh at them after, because initially it hurts. Mm-hmm. But then once it scabs over and heals, you have that scar behind to remind you of what it was. You're reminded of the phantom pain, but then you're also reminded of the good stuff, and you can laugh at it eventually. If it wasn't important, it leaves nothing behind, and you forget. Mm-hmm. And so, and that's okay. And sometimes that's fine, because it wasn't important in the first place. But the point is that it's gonna leave scars behind, and you don't get over scars. They're still there. You're still going to see them. And I'm losing my train of thought. I'm sorry.
You're okay. Take a sec. There's niggas talking in the background. Anyway, my entire family. So we started recording when they were gone, and they all came back within 5 minutes of each other.
At the same time, and we have a note on the door that says, we're recording, please be quiet.
She's trying to get him to drink something. That's funny. I'm like, you're gonna drink that, and you're gonna be like, oh my god, fall in love.
We're recording. They probably can't hear me. They can't hear me on a daily basis.
But did you hear how she just said that? She barely, I feel like you lowered your voice, but then tried to sound like you yelled. I'm figuring Khairah out. I feel like, I'm gonna call you out real quick. I feel like either you don't know yourself as well as you say you do, or you're...
I never attested to knowing myself.
Listen, because okay, listen, I feel like,
called you out.
No, because look, there'll be times where, this is an example because it's a nitpick and because I bring it up every episode, but she'll be like, oh, I don't like arguing, I don't like getting into it, I'll just walk away. The very first time, this is an actual ass argument, not just me picking on a debate. The first time we ever got, and it was tame, really like completely tame. The first time we ever got into it, we were talking about her friend and her fuckboy, and like why they were doing the things they did, or what she needed to work on, or whatever. And like we're genuinely honest to God going back and forth, and I'm like, I thought you'd walk away by now.
I wanted to have the last word.
And that's my point. So she's like, oh, I don't like to argue.
No,
you don't like to lose an argument, and that's different. And I only noticed that because
I don't like heated arguments.
That's like, I'm also gonna disagree with you. I'm gonna delete this part. But one time we were hanging out outside because I like being outside during the summer, and she's getting into it with her mom. And the only listen, because she's gonna be like, here's what she tells me when I bring this up regularly. She's like, oh, but I didn't used to do that. This is a newer thing for me. And I'm like, okay, but then you have to stop describing yourself with outdated terms because you clearly don't mind arguing. That's what I'm gonna say, because I feel like, listen, we're recording. Thank you. As far as coping mechanisms, this is why it's going to be a whole series, because there's also coping with trauma or other people's expectations. And that's why I feel like Khairah says things that aren't necessarily true about who she is. So it's kind of like affirmations, and this is super hard off topic, and I'm letting her stall by doing this, but she'll say two things, or like these are just two examples because these are things I hear her say all the time. So one of them is oh, I'm a nerd, and I'm like, why? And then the second one is, I'm not that girly. So she's over there in anguish. No, listen, because here's the thing.
She doesn't like heels means you girly.
That's not what I said. That's an example. So here now, that's the first one I'm gonna dive into then, since you want to nitpick at it.
No,
so listen, for me, yeah, we do at some point. For me, being girly is doing things that are associated with women. Now, the reason she and I both reject that is because of the connotations that come with that from society.
That's fair.
But on a personal level, Khairah she wears wigs, she keeps her nails long, she puts on makeup unprompted.
I never told you why I kept my nails on, and I do it prompted. That's
no,
only when
you
I have
don't.
a photo shoot.
No, that's not facts. When we go to the mall, she might do her eyebrows. She'll put on a little bit of makeup. You do your eyebrows pretty regularly.
I'll do my eyebrows, but I don't wear if I wear makeup,
you're not wearing full eyeshadow. She will wear eyeliner and the full eyebrows, which I feel like is more effort because I'm not finna do that shit. At least not on a regular. Guess that's fair. But listen, she buys cute clothes. No, to me that's full. Okay, she's not wearing like foundation and shit like that because that's just fundamentally uncomfortable and not who she is. She's not like what I call that. She's not an Instagram girly girl, you know what I'm saying? She's just a real girl, you know what I mean? And that she can also do masculine things and take pride in things that are typically associated with being masculine. But
I appreciate that.
Because she doesn't see the duality in that herself, she'll say things like, I'm not that girly, or I'm not overly girly. And I called her out for it the other day, and I was like, but it's the fact that you keep qualifying the girly. You're not saying I'm not girly. You're saying I'm not that girly. And that's just...
I have to acknowledge that I do have some girly traits.
But in saying I'm not that girly and not... Because you don't ever acknowledge it. You just say, oh, I'm not that girly. That's the first thing you say. So you're not acknowledging it. And my point in all of this is that she says things that are not true because she's...
so I'm not a nerd?
My point in bringing that one up is because I feel like that's a role you're trying to give yourself. So I was just about to tie it around. It's like affirmations. I said that a little bit. It's like affirmations. So she's like, if I say this enough, then it'll be true. So I think that's one of her old coping mechanisms.
That's fair, but I don't know how to. I can't agree with that to a certain extent. I guess I don't, and I never attested to knowing myself. I just want to point that out. But I don't know how to describe myself other than being a nerd because I was so used to being one. And I do have nerdy traits. I can admit that.
I think it's more so the fact that you feel the need to describe yourself. That makes me feel like you're trying to describe yourself. Does that make sense? Like,
I'm trying to identify myself.
Yeah, and that bringing it back, I feel like you're trying to put labels on yourself when you don't need to, just because you don't know where you feel in the spaces yet.
And that's fair, because for a long time my sole purpose was basically being, I hate saying this, but being like a parent.
Yeah, she was a caretaker. She was a caretaker for her entire family.
And so in doing that and being so, like, when I get into stuff, sometimes I get like fully into it, and I just threw myself all the way into it that I lost myself in it. And me trying to rediscover that is like, I guess, why I grasp onto certain words. I'm a word person, so
she
words.
Is, yeah. But that's why I had to call her out real quick. Just because if she's
I
brought the awareness of this to me, and I feel like it's time I return the favor.
No, you're being spiteful.
I'm not. No, I'm listening because
I'm just joking.
I was gonna, no, listen, I have to acknowledge this for the audience though. I can be, but first of all, I'm not for this reason, because I don't know if I recorded this, but we talked a couple of weeks ago, maybe about a month, about how she helped me put a lot of the things I was going through to ease. And I really, for the most part, 2020 didn't have any problems. And I know that sounds really stupid to say it like that, but like, based on the fact that most humans are typically bitching and moaning about something, and I had nothing valid to complain about. I didn't have any emotional issues. I didn't have anything just sitting on my mental that I couldn't talk about. You know what I'm saying? She helped me put a lot of that to rest. So then that gave me time to like focus on myself and like, why am I trying to find something to be upset about even? Or the fact that I finally decided I needed to get ADHD testing because I was able to recognize that I was starting to have some more severe symptoms. You know what I'm saying? Something like that I may not have noticed if I hadn't had the mental space. Ease, yeah, like the space to deal with that, and she helped me create that space. And I feel like she's putting burdens on her own plate, so I'm gonna at least point it out because I can't take them off for her.
That's fair.
Anyway, I love you. You're welcome. All right,
guess.
enough
No.
stall. We had the hard sidetrack.
One of the reasons is because we had stuff in the background of distraction. But going back to it, I wanted to be able, like I said, I'm a word person, and I wanted to be able that if somebody ever asked me, how do you get over grief, I would know how to explain it to them in a way that wasn't like depressing and saying, oh no, you never get over it. You don't, but you learn to live with it. But then also knowing what learning to live with it means. And knowing that learning to live with it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be something sad that just brings you down all the time. You're going to have bad moments. I mean, everybody does. But you're going to have bad moments, but then you also, once you learn that it's okay and you accept that, you're going to have even better moments out of it. You know, you're going to laugh more at the memories or remember more of the good stuff than the bad thing that happened. And it'll start to overshadow everything. And then you'll have those moments where you have like, okay, I remember this day and it hurts. And so with that, it was today or yesterday, the 27th was the day that my first grandfather passed, the one I was the closest to, 10 years ago. It's hard that it's been 10 years. It's hard to believe that it's been 10 years because, and this was another thing that I said or that I thought about was, days felt like months, months felt like years, and years feels like yesterday. And when a year passed by, it was just like, it felt like it just happened. And just even recognizing that it's been 10 years, it was like, has it really been that long? And it was harder for me when my grandfather passed, because he kind of really just stepped in and stepped up. Like, he was always there, but he kind of just really completely filled the role when my dad passed 5 years before he did. So my dad is coming up on 15 years. Both of my grandfathers has been 10, and my uncle has been 10 later on this year. So this is going to be an interesting year, to say the least. Last year was shit, but this one's going to be interesting. I'm not dealing with it as bad as I thought that I was going to, mainly because I have friends like Kaylyn, my friend Jennifer, and Nesma that emotionally support me. But I knew going into February that this was going to be a tough month. I had some other stuff that happened, along with Kaylyn's mom being diagnosed with cancer, and then dealing with stupid boy shit, that it was just like all compiled into one. And but I guess I can start by going and telling the story. I'm not gonna tell you the story of like when my dad passed. I was turning 11 when he passed, and there's a lot that I just don't remember. And at that time, my coping mechanism was just shutting down and shutting it all out and forgetting. Another thing that happened was around the time that my dad had passed, my twin was kind of spiraling, and he really needed a fatherly figure other than my grandfather and my uncle. And so our biological father was allowed to come back into our life. And I didn't want that, but my twin needed it. And I wholeheartedly rejected it. But I also was a nice person then too. And so I didn't want to hurt his feelings. So I kind of was, although I kind of wanted to suppress certain things or subconsciously suppress things, when my dad passed, I was also kind of forced to, because I didn't want to hurt his feelings by bringing up my daddy, who has always been there, and acknowledging that this is my daddy and that's something that you will never be. And I was just like, oh, I can't talk about this. And that made it even harder for me, which ended up making it harder when I went to college. Because I had roommates that were daddy's girls, and I remember just thinking, I was like, my roommate, one of my roommates, her dad can come in and she just, complain to him and talk to him. My other roommate, her dad was like in New York, but she could videotape him, and I can't have mine. And then what was worse is that I couldn't remember.
Yeah.
And then what made it even worse was that I was starting to forget with my grandfather. Like when I remembered that I couldn't, or not remember, when I realized that I couldn't remember his voice, oh my God, that destroyed me. I was like, I can't remember what he sounded like. And this was something that was comforting me to hear every day. When he passed, I was still hearing him calling my name. And I'm like, I know I just heard him call me, but he's not here. And so when Kaylyn was saying, like, she was hearing her grandfather's voice, and I think to a certain extent I was hearing my dad's voice, but because I don't remember what it sounded like, I don't know how to place it. And that hurts, because I was like, not only do I not have this person anymore, I don't have the one person that I really want to be there. Like, I'm not saying I didn't want my grandfather to be there, but I don't have the one person I really want to be there, and I can't remember anything. And so that was hard. But what made it, I keep saying what made it worse, but it compiles. I was 15, turning 16 when my grandfather passed. Both my grandfathers passed within 3 months of each other, almost on the exact same day. If it was the same day, my other grandfather would have passed on his birthday. But my grandfather, my mom's dad, that we lived with, was getting sick. And we were all in denial about it. But he knew. And he was trying to prepare us the best way that he knew how without telling too much because he didn't want sympathy. I gained that from him. And he didn't want sympathy. He hated it. And he didn't want people to treat him any different. But he also wanted us to be aware, like, I'm not going to be here forever. And he would literally say that. And I'm like, I don't want to talk about that right now. He was like, but we have to. And I'm like, I mean, I get that, but you're here now. But realistically, I should have listened. And we should have had that talk. And one of the last, like, heart-to-hearts I remember us having was him telling me that he was afraid to die. And that was, I haven't even told my mom that. Because it was like, I was grateful that my grandfather was comforted enough by me to be able to express that to me. But that also scarred me for a very long time. I was like, I promised him, I was like, I'm not going to let you give up. And when he died, I felt that I did. I was like, I didn't keep my promise. I said I wasn't going to let you give up, and I did. And then I was so mad at myself for being wrapped up in myself the day that he passed, because he passed at home, and I would never ever change that, because he was where he was supposed to be. He was with family, and he was loved. So I would never ever want that to change, but it still hurt. I remember we were, I'm a reader, and I was reading one of my books, and my mom had the audacity to interrupt me to come eat, to eat breakfast, because I was in the middle of reading. So I was like, now I gotta put the book down, go downstairs and eat. And my grandfather was laying on the floor like he always loved to in the living room. And Bill Cosby show was on, I remember that. And he was telling me something about it, but I was half-ass paying attention because I wanted to finish eating and get back to my book. Mm-hmm. But in my mind, I had it planned out. I was going to read a couple more chapters, because I always say one more chapter and it always end up being more. But I was going to read a couple more chapters, and I was going to come downstairs and I was going to play cards with my grandfather, and then be all fine. It doesn't matter that I didn't pay attention. It would be all good. I had planned this in my head. Worst things about plans is a lot of times they don't follow through. And so I finished eating. I put my plate in the sink. I walked back upstairs to my room and sat down and read. And it was just like, it felt like a few minutes later, my mom yelled my name. And I was like, what did I do now? Mm-hmm. I was like, I know I washed off my plate. What did I do? And so I went downstairs, and I remember my heart just pounding, because she was standing over my grandfather, and she was like, she just called, and there was literally nothing that could be said, but he had made this noise like he was sucking in breath, like snorting it in. And we was like, oh, thank God he's okay. He's just not wearing his CPAP machine. He hated that damn machine. And that was at the time where CPAP machines were more invasive. They were fairly new. So they were loud, invasive, and hella uncomfortable. And so he felt that if he wore it, during the day, okay, I guess I should explain. CPAP is for sleep apnea, and which means that when you sleep, you're a lot of times choking in your tongue, and you're not getting enough oxygen or bringing in enough oxygen to supply your brain. So you're essentially cutting off oxygen to your brain. Mm-hmm. So the point of the CPAP is to force oxygen into your body while you're sleeping, so you get the right amount. Well, my grandfather, because he hated wearing it at night, he was like, well, I'll just wear it during the day, and then at nighttime I'll be fine. And in my adolescent mind, I was like, okay, that kind of makes sense. Realistically, that doesn't, because when you're conscious, you're bringing in the right amount of oxygen, breathing, yeah. So you don't need it. So he made the snorting noise, and we put the CPAP machine on him. He was like, okay, he's fine. He just wasn't wearing his damn machine. I was like, okay, I can go back upstairs and read. Everything was fine. I explicitly remember saying, oh, he scared me. And I was like, and then I went back upstairs and I went back to reading. Mm-hmm. And it felt like minutes later again. And she called me again. I'm like, okay, what did I really do now? And the short walk between the hallway and where he was laying at on the floor, because he laid in the middle of the walkway because it was his house. That's what he wanted. It only had to been about maybe 3-4 steps, but it felt like I was going down this long corridor, and my heart was in my feet but in my throat at the same time, and I felt so empty. And I was mad at my mom because I was like, why did she take the machine off of him? Why did she take the CPAP off of him? And she was, shaking him and calling his name. And I, in my mind, because I'm overly confident, I'm like, I got this. All you got to do is just tap him, and then he'll wake up and be like, oh, why you touch me? I was awake, but you ain't have to touch me, though. Because he was in the Army. So he didn't really sleep that deep. And literally, you would just tap him, and he would wake up. And I remember doing that, and I called his name, and he didn't wake up. And then we had this nickname for him. We called him Bappa, but the full name was Unsa Bappa. And we hadn't said that in a long time because we got short with it. And I hadn't called him Unsa Bappa in a long time, but I did that day. And I was like, Unsa Bappa, wake up. He didn't wake up. And that was the first time that I understood the word lifeless. Because I don't remember if I grabbed it or if somebody else grabbed it or if this was after the paramedics had got there. But I explicitly remember his hand was picked up and it just fell. Like nothing was there. And it just wasn't there. And that broke me more than anything, more than the paramedics coming in, more than my mom trying to do the CPR and everything, because in that moment I knew that he was gone, but I was still in denial about it. And I had never seen that before. It just dropped. And I remember paramedics had gotten there, and they, you have that little thing where it, zaps you back to that. And it was, the technology tell you if it's recommended for you to do it or not, because they had to put the patches on his body, and it said it wasn't recommended. I was like, in my mind, I was like, that thing is lying. You gotta do it because he's not breathing. You can't find a pulse. You gotta do something. No heartbeat. Do something. It's lying. Do it. And they didn't. They put him on a stretcher, and my mom had to go with him. So I was the oldest, so I was there to watch my younger siblings. And my mom had called my aunt, who's actually her cousin, to go to the hospital with her. And she would call, and she was periodically checking on me. But I knew that he was gone, and one of the reasons is that I had a phone, and it was a government phone. And it was doing some weird stuff it had never done before. And I was like, I think my grandfather's here with me now instead of where he should be. But I denied it. And so we kind of tried to go into like a normal routine. Can you give me tissue? Routine of how it would normally be when he would go for his dialysis treatment. We go and clean up the floor because he used the living room as his bedroom. I think that was also like a army thing, to feel like he was the protector of the house, so he just stayed in the front of the house. He had his own room, he just didn't want to be in there. And we would clean up the floor. My mom told me to clean up, and settling into that normal routine kind of made it a little bit better. I was like, if I just pray, it's gonna be all right, it's gonna be all good. But it wasn't, not for me at least. And I was like, I remember just praying, so I was like, if you just bring him back, I'll do everything right. Just don't take him away from me. And I was like, it'll be okay if, my mom had called, and she was like, they're still working on him, so that's good news. And it had to be about an hour later. And I was like, okay, so that's good news. He's listening to me praying, and it's gonna be okay. And then she hadn't called in a while, and so I was like, well, I have to call her to see what's going on. And she was like, she answered, and I was like, how's everything going? She said, I'll be there in a minute, is what she said. And I knew. I didn't want to, but I knew. And so I was like, she's just trying to surprise us. You'd be surprised at how much your mind tries to, or how many excuses your mind can make up to try and make you feel better.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, no, she just want to tell us the good news face to face. Not really. And then she walked in and had his clothes in the bag. And from far away I could see it said property of Billy Green. And I was like, now why would they have a bag with his clothes in it? So I said, oh no, he just probably like messed it up or something, and he didn't need it because he's wearing a hospital gown, so they just bring it back so we can wash the clothes. Damn well knowing that any other time you've been in the hospital, they keep the clothes there.
Mm-hmm.
And I walked up to her and I was like, so where is he? And she said, your papa, he didn't make it. And oh, that's not what I wanted to hear. And I kept replaying, what could I have done different? I remember I felt so helpless and so useless when everything was going on, when she was getting the thing, because they told her that he had an infection before, and I think they were lying. I think he had cancer because of the medicine that he had. But they told her it wasn't contagious, but they just didn't know, quote unquote. And so she had to use a specific mask thing that allowed you to do CPR without, doing actual
the mouth
contact.
Yeah, those are good.
And she beat herself up about it because she had it in her room that was, she had this like office room that was in her basement, and she had to go in there and get it, but because she was panicking, she couldn't find it as fast. And she was like, if I had just gotten to that sooner. And I was just like, if I had just paid attention, if I had just stayed down there when he was talking to me, he was just talking to me. And I will forever regret not remembering what he was trying to tell me on the Bill Cosby show, or he was trying to get me to look at, because that was the last thing he ever said to me, and I wasn't paying attention. And I was like, I wish I could have just told him I loved him one more time. I wish I could have just played the cards with him and not been so engrossed in reading the damn book.
Mm-hmm.
And I went back to school the next day because he asked me to. And that's why I say he knew that he was dying. We had conversations before, and even though I tried to hard stop them,
mm-hmm.
he would be like, if anything ever happens to me, don't stop going to school. And I'm like, what? But what I probably won't be able to do. He was like, no, then do it for me. I don't want you to miss any school. Now I did miss it the week the whole week his funeral was.
Yeah.
But I didn't have the energy anymore.
Yeah, that's different.
But because he asked me to, I went back to school the next day, and like I just remember just passing by through, and I called one of my friends. Her name is Nija, and I told her that my grandfather had passed, and I didn't know if I was going to go to school the next day. And she was the first person, when she saw me, she came up to me and gave me a hug. And that was one of the hardest experiences I ever had to deal with. And by that point, I was so numb that 3 months later, when my other grandfather had passed, I didn't have as many tears. And I felt so bad for not having. I wasn't as close to him as I was to my mom's dad. This was my daddy's dad. that passed 3 months later.
Yeah.
I wasn't as close to him, but what my mom didn't tell me was that we were planning on starting to pack up our stuff and go live with him in Texas, because he needed the help and we needed the comfort.
Yeah.
And we didn't want to be in Michigan anymore.
Michigan sucks.
And my grandfather was cremated, so he was going to go with us anyway. And so I remember my mom talked on the phone with my daddy's dad, my other grandfather, and he couldn't remember who we were. And that made me cry more than when he passed. And the day when he had passed, I remember my oldest brother, he has a different mom. He had called, but I was already asleep. And so when I woke up the next morning, I didn't actually look at my phone at the time, but we have a cousin named Bear too.
Yeah, I have a cousin named
And he, on my daddy's side, he just pulled up and he knocked on our door, and I'm like, why is Bear here? It's so early in the morning. He told us that my grandpa had passed. And that's when I noticed my phone, and I was like, oh, Lil Junior called me. And that was the reason. But I didn't have any tears because I was already just so numb. And it seemed like my other grandfather just passed yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And then, still gets worse. My uncle, my mom's brother, her only brother, was in and at the hospital. And mainly because he wasn't taking care of himself, he was obese. And that's because he was depressed. And my mom says to this day she thinks he dressed up to go to the hospital to die. Because he got all cleaned up and smelled good. And then he went to the hospital and things just got worse. The hospital was neglectful. They didn't change the tubes that was in his throat. He ended up getting an infection. And the way I found out that he died was the most fucked up. Because my mom accidentally told me because she was trying to handle business. She was picking me up from school. By this time, I'm actually 16. This was in December. My birthday's in September. And she was talking on the phone. And normally I don't pay attention. I just remember getting in the car. And she said, I just don't want him to go to the morgue. So that's how I found out that my uncle had passed. And everything in my hand just dropped, and she realized that I was in the car, and she was like, oh shit, I have to call you back. And that was that. And it was so hard because we dealt with so much already. Mm-hmm. And it seemed like my family was falling apart, and my mom's siblings weren't, or her sisters weren't as familial as we felt they should have been. They were fighting over my grandfather's house that we lived in, but because they felt that money was being hidden and there was no trust, they rather that our house had gotten lost to foreclosure because he didn't have a will, and not sign off the rights to his estate, that they just took everything. The state took everything. Mm-hmm. And so, and it seemed like my aunt kind of gloated in it because she was like, I just want to come and take a tour through the last family house. Well, it wouldn't be the last family house if you signed over the rights to his estate and you knew that we had no other place to go. So by the time I was 17, we were essentially homeless. Our house was taken, they foreclosed on it. The bank wouldn't let us continue to buy even though we were still making payments on the house. And they let somebody else buy the house who tricked us into paying taxes and then promptly kicked us out and got us evicted illegally through falsifying court reports. So,
man, it's a rough 2 years. Fucking Christ.
Yeah. So, with that, I went into a really, really dark place.
I was gonna say, what are some things that you had to do to come back?
I definitely went into an extremely dark place, and the thing that helped me the most was that my mom actually she thought she had cancer because my grandmother, in that 2-year period of time, my other grandmother passed. My mom's mom, from ovarian cancer, and she thought that she had cancer because her stomach was growing. She had this bulge and she had a hernia and stuff like that. She found out she was pregnant. And we didn't.
But she wasn't supposed to be able to get pregnant.
Yeah,
though. Yeah.
That was the thing. Apparently her tubes were supposed to be tied and all that. She wasn't supposed to. And then she also had problem pregnancies before, where they said that she would not be able to support another child. And so she found out that she was pregnant with my youngest brother. And honestly, that was the thing that helped me the most, because I thought that I was gonna, when she thought she had cancer, she actually never expressed that she did. I just knew. I don't know how I knew, but she never told us that she thought she had cancer. But the way that she was acting, I was like, I think she thinks she has cancer. And I prayed so hard. I was like, you just took everybody else. You can't take her too.
Oh, yeah.
And so then she found out that she was pregnant. And we didn't know whether to be happy or sad because we just lost everybody. But we happy she don't have cancer. But damn, you pregnant.
Right, new life. All right.
And I was 17. I was 16. I was 17 when he was born. And he literally was like the saving grace for all of us, and just kind of dragged us out of depression. Because you kind of, some people don't have to, but in the way that we were, you kind of just had to.
I was gonna say, when you have something to take care of, it kind of forces you to focus on something outside yourself.
Yeah, and then that helped me be able to refocus on myself and then dealing with it. Because I had this little baby who I called my baby to help take care of. He made me feel like a great big sister, because when he was like 3 months and I had like a cold, and I wasn't able to hold him because my mom didn't want him to get sick too, but he would cry whenever he heard my name because he was so used to me, holding him. And my mom was like, I know exactly what he wants. She told me to come here. He cried, and as soon as he was in my arms, he stopped. And I was like, oh my God, my baby.
Yeah, that's how she was with her dad.
And so I was actually. Fun fact: my mom had to take me off of being I still had breast milk, but she had to pump it for me because I bit her. I had teeth when I was 3 months, and I bit a hole in her. And so then from then on, I was breastfed from pumped milk, and my dad would feed me. And whenever I wanted my hair, or whenever my hair would have to be done, my mom would have him do it because that was the only way that I wouldn't cry. But yeah, that was one of the happiest moments that I had in that period of time, other than being accepted to U of M. The first one, accepted to U of M in the school, because I am prideful. And
you're smart.
Oh, why, thank you. No. So that was one of the happiest moments that I had, and that just was like, I can't be sad anymore. I can't be angry anymore, because what is that going to change? And then I remember something that my grandfather used to tell me: what is being mad going to change? And if it could, would you really want it to be the thing to change it? Because then realistically, you have to stay mad for the rest of the time because that's the only thing that brought it back. So you can never enjoy it in the first place. And I was like, okay, I can't be angry anymore, but I have to deal with it. And so I started talking about my grandfather more and just reliving like the moments and laughing and like his quirkiness and like some of the sayings that he said. My mom just reminded me of one yesterday because I called to check on her and see how she was doing. And I of course have to express that my mom is old. And so she was like, yeah, 5 years older than toothpaste, 10 years older than dirt. And that's something that my grandpa used to say all the time. So it's just having those and then being able to smile again. But to get there, I had to have something to depend on, or that needed me
dependent on you. Yeah,
that was dependent on me to get me out of myself, and then actually allowing myself to remember the moments and allowing myself to cry at first, because yes, I'm gonna cry first, because I have to cry and experience the pain to get to the happy part. And then now I can have those moments and think about some of the crazy stuff he said and not cry about it. I just laugh because it's funny. And it brings me comfort. I can watch the old shows again. I can listen to certain songs again, because at first I would listen to them because it made me sad. Well, first I stopped listening to it because it made me sad. And then I listened to them because it made me sad. And now I listen to it because it brings me comfort. So I had to go through those stages.
Yeah, and like everybody... Okay, while she's over here begging for the door to be open, no, she wants to leave. My cat, when my dog died, was a huge saving grace, because she's just been making more noise this episode, but I don't know if it was super apparent. She started doing that because I was about to cry.
Yeah.
And just in that way, I would never describe myself as much of a crier, because that's not something I can do easily or comfortably, regardless of whether I'm alone or not or whatever. And having her be there to remind me there's other ways to process the emotions, so I can still go through it and I can still talk about it without needing to be like frontward emotional about it, you know what I mean? Because like, and then that's something I have to give Khairah credit for. I can't cry and continue on about my business at the same time, probably because I don't cry so often, you know what I mean? But I feel like it wasn't even super apparent. If I wasn't sitting here with her, I wouldn't recognize that she was crying throughout most of that story, you know what I mean? Because you're still because you've coped well, you know. Yeah, man.
I guess here's one thing that I will say. I am comfortable. I hate saying it. I don't like to cry. I really don't. But I hate admitting that I do it kind of often.
Yeah.
But what I had to realize for myself, especially when I was in college, because I did have a hard time, because depression kind of really, really took a hold of me again then, because not only did I was starting to actually deal with the fact that my dad had passed, then I still had my grandfather on top of that. And then 2 weeks before I actually started my freshman semester, so after the bridge program, for those who may know what that is.
Who were hip, yeah.
My last grandmother passed. And I was just like, damn, just everybody. And so and then I had professors telling me that I wasn't smart enough to be there. So, and then I was starting to believe them. Not true.
For some reason. Yeah.
So I had a tough time. And one thing that I'm not comfortable crying in front of strangers, but and actually in front of a lot of people, most people, because it embarrasses me. And that goes based on the way that I was raised. You don't cry in front of nobody. But if it's somebody that I'm comfortable with, like, I would never cry in front of Kaylyn's parents. But I can cry in front of Kaylyn. I would never cry in front of Kaylyn's brother.
Nah.
But I can cry in front of Kaylyn. I can cry in front of my friend Jennifer or Nesma, or even just like my siblings and stuff like that, and I'll try to stop myself. But for other people, no, I refuse. If I feel the need to cry, I will stop myself, and I will still go on about my business because it has to be done, and I will put my emotions on hold and cry later. I've actually had to do that.
The fact that you can do that is what I think is impressive about that. Because for me, if it's like, no, I can't cry now, I'm not ever finna do that shit. You know what I'm saying?
Well, see, I know that it's gonna come at some point. I just have to put it in check for it to come at a different time where I'll be more comfortable and not further embarrass myself.
Embarrassed. But listen, I still want to say though, it's the strength that you have to be able to cry in the first place.
Well, okay, I can definitely say
not giving yourself any credit.
I had to learn that because I was what I was saying as far as college is, I was like, okay, I need to have times where I just cry and let it all out because I'm bottling up my emotions right now, and so I need to have moments where I just cry and let it all out, so I'm not feeling miserable about it for the rest of the time. Yeah. So then I cry, and then I feel bad in that moment, and then, you know, after I, you know, maybe cry myself to sleep. That sounds pathetic, but
no, it doesn't. Listen, man, I feel
cry
like
myself to sleep, and then I will feel better the next day because I let it out.
I was gonna say, man, for only people who are emotionally immature, I think that sounds pathetic. Personal opinion on that one.
That's fair.
And here's what else I want to say about that. I don't think that, as far as growth is concerned, you should, in my personal opinion, not literally saying like you should, but I think you should focus more on finding people you can cry around, because that's not something to be embarrassed about, and if people are making you feel embarrassed about it, they can suck a dick.
Well, okay, that's fair, but it's not that. It's purely based on the way that I was raised, and I know that.
That's fair.
My grandfather was an army person. He was very present in my life. My dad was a tough guy, I like to think. And the way that I was raised is that you don't let anybody see your weakness. You don't let anybody see your tears. You never cry in front of anybody. My grandfather, I will always remember this. Although he was sad about it, I can honestly say that I've never genuinely seen him cry. It's not that he wasn't comfortable around us to do that. It was being raised. He was raised when there was segregation and stuff like that. He was born in the 40s. So, segregation and all of that, he had to be tough. He had a parent who said that she wished he was dead instead of his brother who had passed. So, he had to deal with not having emotional support, and then being in the army, a black man in the army in the 70s, in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
You had to be tough. You don't let anybody see your tears.
I feel like that's unhealthy to keep as a tradition.
That's true. That's why I'm able to cry in front of you. So my center of people, I am comfortable crying around. Now, it will take a minute for me to get to that point. Kaylyn, the way that I was able to cry in front of Kaylyn kind of just randomly happened.
Because I ask invasive questions.
Well, not just that, but the situation, like, she never seen me fully ugly cry until I came here in May.
Well, I don't even, okay, number one, I don't think that's true, because you reminded me some of the conversations we were having when we first met, so I think it was back then.
Okay, that's fair.
But see, another thing is my preferred method of dealing with that is figuring out how you would prefer I deal with that. And I can blame it on ADHD now. I get overstimulated very easily. Please don't fucking touch me if I'm already crying. You know what I'm saying? So then, because that's how I prefer to react, I'm going to treat her the same way.
And she actually asked me after
that. I did have to ask, because I don't want to not be a good friend. Anyway, we are running out of time. We're getting an hour into the third part of our recording.
Oh, shit, I'm sorry.
No. It was well worth it. I'm kind of proud. I was going to say, here's the thing. I kind of want to have a supporting your friends through grief episode, because I think that's actually an important part of the foundation of our relationship. Yeah. And not only that, but I want to dive more into detail about the caring for other things, because for some people, yes, that can be a child. For other people, that's a pet. I firmly believe you should find that is the healthiest way to cope with grief, because if you're learning to appreciate another life, you are learning the value of life. You know what I'm saying?
If you're learning to appreciate another life, you're learning the value of the life that was just lost.
Exactly. And I'm not saying you should go out and have a child or adopt a pet, because those are very, time-consuming, emotional, expensive things at the end of the day. But extreme. Go volunteer at a soup kitchen. Go volunteer at an animal rescue. You know what I'm saying? There are things to do.
They even have, I know at U of M they used to have it where you could volunteer to hold babies.
Mm-hmm. Because they just need the human contact.
And they are so pure in their essence that it kind of in my experience, it kind of just forces you to relax.
Yeah, and I think every living thing, even if plants are your thing, you know what I'm saying? Just find something that is dependent on you, at least emotionally, because that'll force you to kind of deal with yourself a little bit. Now, if you're the type of person that gets violent, maybe don't fucking do that. Right. Oh, okay, hold on. We're running out of time. We're going to do the outro on a different bit. Yep, so I strongly encourage that you learn to cope through caring for other life, no matter what form that life takes. Khairah, what's your takeaway?
I agree, and I just have to insert this really quick, because as I've mentioned, I have a twin, and we had completely different experience on how we dealt with it. Mm-hmm. And he kind of is on a down spiral in the way that he dealt with it, and in my way of dealing with grief, I was like, I have to grow up. And his was like, I have to
run from this guy.
I have to run from reality. And so, and in doing that, he didn't focus on life and having siblings and stuff like that. My siblings were my saving grace. Even the ones that was already there, because I was like, I had to hold it together for them too. But then also having the new one, it was just like, you gotta do it. And so, allow yourself to cry. It's okay. Crying will help you release. If you feel, the need to, don't hold it in. It will help. It will release a lot of the pent up energy, and then allow you to bring in the positive energy.
All right, and then follow us on Instagram and Twitter. I have hyperlinks because I found out how to do that.
Nice.
So there are now links in the description to our joint Instagram and Twitter and our individual ones. And then I had to make a permanent link for the Discord because I transferred the ownership from myself to myself. Yep. Yep. All right. So thank you so much for being patient with us over the last month. We've clearly had a lot of shit going on. Thank you for showing interest in our content, and thank you for being on board for the long haul, even if you just put it on in the background while you're doing other things.
Yeah.
Yep, that's the point of a podcast. Yep.
There you go.
All right.
So with that being said, my name is Khairah. No. I have to say this in respect of my grandfather, because he loved my name, and my daddy, because he gave me my name. My name is Khairah.
No, that's not what the outro is.
No,
it's Khairah is here, Kaylyn was here.
With that being said, Khairah is here?
Yes.
Oh.
It's been a minute.
Damn.
Yeah, I was gonna say, It's been a minute.
Take two. Mm-hmm. All right, so with that being said, in respect for my grandfather and my daddy who gave me my name, Khairah is here.
Kaylyn was here.
And thanks for listening.
Bye! Bye.